I'm joined now by Democratic Congressman Jason Crow. He's a member of the House Intel Committee and Armed Services. He's a decorated Army combat veteran who served in the last two Middle East wars, which are on everyone's minds tonight, Iraq and Afghanistan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I've got all kinds of questions for you, but first, both as a veteran and a member of Congress, I want to give you the floor. What do you want to say to the American people tonight?
Well, here we go again, right? Apparently, we've learned nothing after 20 years of war, trillions of dollars of taxpayer dollars, thousands of American lives, 3.5 million combat deployments, 20 years of largely failed regime change and nation building efforts. People have had it. I've had it, right? The anger and the resentment around America for our failures of military adventurism are very, very deep. Right. Meanwhile, we're spending tens of billions of dollars now on this Iran operation. People can't afford groceries. They can't afford homes. They can't afford to send their kids to school. This is the real problem, and they've had it, and I've had it.
Yeah. OK, you're clear. Democrats talking about reconvening in Washington. What is the right response? We have heard tonight from experts saying whatever the risks and questions, there's not going to be a ground war. Of course, we've heard, and the American people remember all the way back to the Vietnam mission creep, what those assurances might be worth. But we've heard that. So the lowercase version is maybe it ends here. The risk version is we're in a third long-term war in the region, or God forbid, a regional war with multiple countries. What should Congress do given that risk portrait?
Well, Congress needs to insert itself aggressively into the accountability loop here. The reason why we had 20 years of conflict and still endless conflict that begins today, we spent those trillions of dollars and it ended pretty poorly, I believe, is because there was no accountability loop. Right? Congress stopped voting on it. We financed the whole thing largely with debt financing, and nobody was accountable. So it just happened. If I had $1 for every time a general or an admiral or somebody else said, hey, it's going well, we just need more troops, we just need another year, we just need another surge. We did that year after year after year after year. And by the way, we had lots of tactical successes, right? So we should actually look for tactical successes. We won every single battle we ever fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every single tactical battle we won. And then we lost the war. So yes, our military is great, capable of doing great things. The question that we have to ask right now, is this what we should be doing? And what is the end game? And how is this in the interests of the American people? How is it going to make their lives better? I'm an unabashed national security Democrat. I will not hesitate to use the military to protect Americans and when it's in our vital national security interests. But that has to be debated, and that debate has to occur, and those votes have to happen in the United States Congress.
Understood. And what you're saying, sir, and has been echoed across many of the experts we've spoken to tonight, and we've been heavily indexed with veterans and people with military leadership experience. What I keep hearing is it's unclear why we're there and which of the several reasons that have been offered are the real reason. And I have to tell you, that's the nicest word would be strange. Other words would be horrific and dangerous for the people being asked to carry this out at risk. And so I'm curious, we're in the early hours of this, and we try to deal with the facts and the evidence first, obviously. But is there something strange or worse happening here that this government at this time doing this thing can't tell us why?
Yeah, it's deeply disturbing. Would the real rationale for this operation please stand up? Because it changes by the hour, right? It's regime change one moment. It's some undefined, undescribed imminent threat that, oh, by the way, as a member of the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee, I should know about already if there is an imminent threat, which makes me deeply skeptical of that. It's supporting the Iranian people, which, by the way, there are far better ways to support the Iranian opposition in their quest for freedom and democracy and to escape tyranny than bombing the entire country of Iran. So I am deeply skeptical of the motivations, right? I think for Trump, this is about power. He wants to dominate and show he's in charge and assert power, right? Just like he has in many other instances in the use of the military and law enforcement, both at home and abroad. And it's a very, very dangerous precedent to set, which is why, again, we come back to Congress having to be held accountable and responsible for it, as our founders envisioned, because they thought that this could happen, right? That a runaway president could just start using our military without any accountability, without the American people who have to do the fighting and the dying and the financing of these operations, without them having a voice in the process.
Yeah.
So they said the way they have a voice in the process is to put representatives in charge and accountable for it.
Yeah. You said with a real rationale, please stand up. I detected a possible Eminem reference there, even amidst these serious times. I want to play what Rachel Maddow asked earlier today, because she really said this, and we're hours out from when she said it because people woke up to this news. But she said it early. What are we doing? Take a look.
So what are we doing here? It's not that they're about to get us with intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's not that they are enriching uranium to such a degree that it is dangerous and we must stop that. It's not that their nuclear program, which Trump says he obliterated, has somehow unobliterated itself and is now a pressing danger again. Why did we just go to war with Iran?
And that's the question against the rationales, as we've been discussing. A Wall Street Journal quoting a very top authority here that you work with, Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat on the Intel Committee, who says he's already seen the Trump administration misrepresent intelligence on this attack.
The addition by President Trump of a war of choice. And the fact, I agree with Chris Matthews earlier, it is not optional that the president has to come before the American people and make a case and then ask Congress. He does not have the right to arbitrarily do this. And even the messaging in the last week, at one point, the president was talking about getting rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Of course, he had claimed 7 months ago that our strike at that point obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, which it did not. And unfortunately, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency got fired for telling the truth. But that was going to be one reason. Then the reason morphed into, well, Iran's got ballistic missile capabilities that could hit American troops in the region or ally Israel. And then in the last 24 hours, you've seen the language change to regime change. So I don't have the foggiest idea what the goal is here, but I do know this, and the president himself has acknowledged this. He's chosen to put American troops in harm's way, and even he expects that there'll be American casualties. For a war of choice without an imminent threat to America is, extraordinary in itself. And I think, again, the president, maybe believes that it's all going to be as easy as a simple bombing run 7 months ago against the Iran nuclear facility, or the brilliant execution by our military of extracting Maduro, starting down what could be a engaged conflict with Iran for who knows how long. You are talking about something that is really destabilizing and dangerous.
And to your point, Trump himself has used the word war to describe this operation, obviously did not get congressional approval, that war would require. And now you have Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who's calling for Congress to come back to Washington right away, vote on a war powers resolution. Do you, sir, believe there are votes for that resolution to pass? And are you even confident that the administration would comply if it did? And how would that even work, practically speaking, since military operations are already underway?
I do think we should come back, and I think we should vote. And I think, I can't predict the outcome of that vote. But remember, the War Powers Act was set up, somewhat for these kind of incidents. But normally the case is a president reacts to something or some incident takes place, and he or she does not have the time to build the case. This was not anything that was imminent. This was clearly a buildup of literally weeks. I mean, if the president had chosen in January, when the Iranian people were out in the street en masse, to take an action at that point, I still think he'd have to make the case, but there was at least outside forces that were potentially forcing his hand. I would quickly point out that one of the reasons he wasn't able to take action at that point was that the aircraft carrier that would have been key to that was off the coast of Venezuela on another one of his military ventures. And our allies in the region, like NATO, was completely focused on his crazy notions about Greenland. So, the fact that he now has spent months building up forces, and he believes he set a red line because he said, "Don't worry, we're gonna take care of the Iranian people." Well, that was his choice. And now to launch this without making the case to the American public, or for that matter to the world, when we know Iran has got proxy forces in the region. We know, we have seen, I think, a decrease. Obviously, the FBI has been hollowed out in a number of ways with Kash Patel's leadership. We've got the director of national intelligence, obsessed about 2020 election theories to try to convince the president that she's loyal to him in terms of his obsession about the 2020 election. God forbid that Iranian proxies or people potentially inspired by Iran take action if we're not fully.
This is absolutely infuriating for people who have actually served their country. You have veterans and active troops asking real questions, saying, "I'm not willing to die in another war that's being sold as freedom, democracy, and human rights." If it's really about oil or distracting from domestic and personal scandals, they're not signing up for that. And you can say it, MAGA is divided over this. Remember, Trump performed unusually well with young men in the last election compared to most Republicans. A big reason for that was a message that his opponent would drag America into new wars. The argument was, if you vote for her, you're voting for war in Iran. You or someone you love could end up fighting. Whether that claim was fair or not, that was a pitch. Now look at what's happening. A major conflict in the Middle East is escalating, and Trump is giving interviews where he shrugs and says essentially that people die in wars. That hits differently when you remember he never served in the military and received deferments during Vietnam. So for critics, it feels like a betrayal. Millions of young men were told the voting Republican meant staying out of foreign wars. They were promised an America First approach that would keep them off foreign battlefields. And now, with conflict growing, it feels like the exact opposite of what they are promised. For many in that coalition, this issue has the potential to seriously fracture MAGA from within.